Oh, it's draft time. It's draft time. And I think we need to talk about that number one overall pick, Fernando Mendoza. I think we can talk. Stay tuned. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy Sean Spencer, one half of that dynamic duo that is Let's Talk Football. You see it right there in the background. How y'all doing? Happy Friday to you. Hope everything is well. April 17th, 2026. Listen, I am back. You know, we are 1 week, less than 1 week away from this year's NFL draft. And we all know the speculation, all these players going. You saw me yesterday talking about Jeremiah Love, um, David Bailey. But today, I got to talk Fernando Mendoza. I got to talk last year's Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, the guy that led the improbable season to have Indiana winning a national championship. This guy is looked, we all think he's going to get drafted number one overall by the Raiders. And it got me to thinking. We all know these quarterbacks, and especially since 2000, have been more likely to A, get Heisman because it seems to be becoming a quarterback award, and B, once they get the Heisman, more often than not, they're getting number one overall picks. And is that right? Does that lead to instant success? I mean, these are the questions I think we need to ask. And then I think what happens too much nowadays is 2, 3 years in, if they don't have this instant success, all of a sudden now we're saying bust. And so let's dive into it a little bit before we even get into that. Yo, we got to talk about this guy, Fernando Mendoza. Obviously, if for those of you who have followed his career, he played out, I believe, in Cal a couple years back, then transferred to Indiana, and has obviously this improbable season with Coach Kirk Signetti. You know him. You know, all I do is win. Just Google me, that type of deal. And does the unthinkable, brings Indiana past all the other Big Ten greats, the Michigans, the Ohio States, and even the teams that came in, like the Oregons and the Utahs and all that from the Pac-12, the former Pac-12. Um, and they takes Indiana all the way to the Natty, gets the W, actually creates an epic moment towards the end of that game where he's sitting here diving and into the end zone. And I mean, just this moment that even when I watch it now, it still gives me chills. Like, dude, this is it. Like, that's one of those things we always think about. What is the Heisman moment? That to me was a Heisman moment, even though it happened after the Heisman. But he gets it. Indiana's the national champ, and I mean, you really when you look at this guy, he's a cool guy. He seems like really just a good natured dude, Cuban born American. Played at I believe Christopher Columbus High School in Miami or in Florida. So you want to wish well, you want to wish him well, and hope everything goes well for him. And we'll see. I mean, we'll see how it plays out. But there's a couple things that are going in his favor. Obviously, his game is pretty legit, but won the Heisman, led his team to a national championship. He was under good coaching in Kirk Signetti. The guy has the ability. We've seen him on the field and in the national championship where the game was close. I believe it was 17-14 when he had that epic run at glory where he dives into the end zone and everything looks great. Like, so you see there's certain things in where you're like, I think this guy could play. But then you also think, who has number one overall pick this year? It's the Raiders. And the Raiders has been synonymous with bringing number one picks in or guys that they thought were going to be great and have ended up bombing. So we don't know how all this is going to play out, but it is very interesting to see. I want to dive into a couple of things about it. Can he be that guy? How long will he be given before people start saying that bust thing? You know, is he a bust X, Y, and Z? And, you know, Mendoza. Is that your number one pick? Would you take him? Could he go to any team and potentially right that ship? So I think we got to dive into all that. But before we do, let me shout out my guy, Anton Benson. Awesome Artisans, does great work. Stay tuned. I'll be back on the other side. Shout out to my guy Anton Benton of Awesome Artisans. He is working his butt off. He actually shared something on Facebook just today where he was sitting here grinding, needing work, hot outside, but the man is putting forth effort. And if you need something done, definitely get at him. That is my guy on Instagram is awesome_artisans. Anton Benton, man. It lives in the 757 of my Virginia Beach area. So definitely get in touch with him. He does good stuff. So yo, it's me, Sean Spencer, one half the dynamic dude. Us Let's Talk Football, and we are diving into Fernando Mendoza, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, just won the national championship, leading Indiana to a 27-21 victory over Miami. Potentially will be the first overall pick. And I asked this before, since he's the potential first overall pick, and there's been a lot of speculation back and forth, can he have success at that? Obviously history tells us a couple things, but being Heisman and being the first overall pick, that definitely begs the question, what does history tell us about this? Like, can just him being the first overall pick and the Heisman Trophy winner, does that equate to greatness? So look, I looked back at it, and there's a number of Hall of Famers that have come first overall, not necessarily Heisman Trophy winners, but guys that have dominated and have taken first overall. You look at the Terry Bradshaws, the John Elways, the Troy Aikmans, Peyton Manning, Eli, all Hall of Fame quarterbacks that were drafted first overall. More recently, you got names like Matthew Stafford, obviously Cam Newton out there, Joe Burrow. I mean, a number of names. And I mean, we've all seen guys come and be first overall picks. We can go all the way back to the Jim Plunkett's or the Steve Bartkowski's, Vinny Testaverde's. I thought he was going to be great. I mean, there's a number of guys. Drew Bledsoe, I thought he was going to be great. But I think one thing we know is that just being a first overall pick does not necessarily mean that you're going to have that instance. I mean, you have some of these guys that will come in and be first overall. I like in Terry Bradshaw. Now we know the history, 4 Super Bowl champions with the Steelers, back to back each time. I mean, beating the Cowboys, beat Minnesota, and then what? Beat Minnesota, twice, Dallas twice, right? No, beat the Rams once, Dallas twice, Minnesota once. So we know, the greatness of Bradshaw. But Bradshaw, struggled early on. Bradshaw, him and Joe Gilliam went back and forth. So it doesn't always equate to that success. Vinny Testaverde, somebody that I had huge hopes for. I thought coming out of Miami, this guy was going to be the guy. But if you watch the national championship game we played against Penn State, had those 5 interceptions. Yeah, we should have seen something was amiss there. And look, Tampa, especially in the 80s, was not a great team. So when he came to Tampa, obviously he had a lot of those issues that he had to deal with. Eventually, he was able to get on the Jets, and I think take them to the AFC Championship once. So he had a long tenured career and ended up having eventual success, but it was not able to fully carry through. And we all know guys like Peyton Manning, did not win the Heisman. Obviously went elsewhere, but Peyton was able to have great success with the Colton, obviously Hall of Fame winning quarterback, Super Bowl winning quarterback. But then you sit there and think about it, and you think about some of these other guys. And there's somebody I want to bring up right here, Michael Vick. Uh, Michael Vick, we know is an electrifying player. We know, I mean, my those from my era look at Michael Vick like, I mean, video game god, otherworldly. His highlights are, I mean, out of this world. If you've seen some of the stuff he's able to do on the field, I mean, you people just being broken down, ankles being broken left and right. The things he was able to do. Now, if we're gonna actually talk about long term success, mm, 50-50. Didn't really wasn't he was able to get to the playoffs, wasn't able to get over the hump. I think he got to the NFC Championship once with Atlanta and lost to the Eagles. Um, so, I mean, Vic was able to have great success. And if I'm not mistaken, being the first black quarterback to get that number one overall pick, this guy was a generational talent. And now, obviously, a lot of quarterbacks that come out today have that mobility, have the ability to get out of those tight situations. And now it's almost a prerequisite that you have to be mobile, and he's one of those guys that definitely popularized that. And going towards what you see today, a year ago, Caleb Williams getting number one overall pick for Chicago. Struggled his first year, had a legit year this past year, but obviously the jury is still out. But then you go to some of these other guys, and all of you know Jamarcus Russell. All of you know this guy. I definitely was not Heisman in Heisman contention or anything, but the Raiders took him first overall. And if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to go back and look. I think he might have been the last first overall quarterback the Raiders took, and that did not fare too well. And I mean, everybody throws that bus sign out there. I think it's safe to say that that's how it was. He did play a couple, but again, with him, there was a lot of things he didn't do personally that he needed to do to make himself a little bit better. And then also you got guys like Tim Couch, okay, great college success, never really equated to the NFL. And that leads to a couple points that I think you need to make. Number one, just because they might have had great college success, just because they might have been drafted number one overall, doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to be a great success in the league. Partly because I think one of the biggest things that has to happen is you have to go to an organization that's ready for your success. And you can't just be the guy that's supposed to save them when there are so many more holes on that team. And we look at the Browns, especially in '99. I mean, it just was not ready. I've had people argue that, okay, well, maybe if this was better, maybe if that was better. The team that he received, the team that he was put on, he wasn't the type, he wasn't the guy that could save. And unfortunately, we see he's always remembered as a bust. Things just did not work out for him over the, and so that's why one of the biggest things I think we need to have is understand what matters, and that is who's developing these guys. Okay, who is around these guys? I mean, a lot of times these guys have great success because they have talent and studs in college, and then you come to the pros and they don't have much of anything. And you have to understand what situation is he coming to. Are a bunch of guys leaving or retiring from the team before? Is he getting help in the run game, in the pass game? How does the O line look? A lot of this comes into play, and sometimes you can do great. Sometimes you can have it where the guy is just that great, where the team might be struggling around him, but he can be the X factor for those other guys that are definitely not that. Which is going to bring us back to Mendoza. I mean, getting picked first overall, it's going to be interesting. I'm going to be quite honest with you. If you look at a lot of these quarterbacks that even came Aikman, they went 1-15 his first year. Peyton Manning threw, I believe, 20 some odd interceptions, I think 26, 28, something like that. Elway struggled early on, and even like I told you, Terry Bradshaw had those. He didn't, necessarily start right away and things like that. So, you know, Mendoza going to the Raiders. Obviously, we know Geno's out. Obviously, what the coach, the old Seattle coach, Pete Carroll, that was the Raiders. He's out. So things are changing a lot. They got 2 tight ends and Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers. They got Ashton Genty at running back. I'm not really sure of the wide receiver game, but I love how he plays. I just don't know if that garners him instant success with the Raiders. So he might struggle. Now, one thing I do think could be highly beneficial to this kid. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's got a good support system. And I think the fact that he seems gutsy, he played at Indiana, which is not the perennial power. He played for a coach that is, no nonsense, that is about getting to know the guys and really pushing them and helping them have success. He's got a good foundation. I think give him a couple years, the guy could be legit. He could be legit. And look, we're going to see. Obviously, people are going to throw this, oh, is he solid? Oh, is he a bust? They're going to show it's going to show up early. So we'll definitely figure that part out. But I think the other question we have to ask is we know he's going first overall. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks go first overall, not win the Heisman, just go first overall. But in the 2000s, we've seen a lot more quarterbacks that have won the Heisman and get first overall pick. But does that equate to immediate success? I don't know. So we're gonna have to ask that question. But we're gonna get that on the other side. Shout out to Alcala's in Chicago. A little commercial for you. Check it out.
Howdy, y'all. Sean Spencer here. Today we're going to take a look at a little piece of Southern country right here in Midwest home, downtown Chicago. Looking for boots? They've got them. Looking for chaps? Not a problem. Looking for hats? They've got that. Find your piece of country living.
Oh yeah, that was Alcala's in Chicago. Great Western Wear did a quick little commercial for them when I was in Chicago back when. So definitely shout them out. But I definitely want to ask this question. That is, does winning the Heisman and getting picked first overall mean guaranteed success in the NFL? I led up to it before. Mendoza wins the Heisman, wins the national championship. Most likely now he will be the first overall pick in the NFL draft. This has only happened 11 times before in history. Okay, you got to go back to 1962 when it first happened with Terry Baker, Steve Spurrier out of Florida in '67, Plunkett in '70, Testaverde out of Miami in 1986. Then the run in the 2000s. You got 02 was Carson Palmer, 08 Sam Bradford, 2010 was Cam Newton, Jameis Winston in 2013, Burrow in 2019, Bryce Young in 2021, and then Caleb Williams in 2022. 7 of these guys came after the 2000s. So it seems to be a little trend. It seems to be a trend that seems to be coming up a lot more as of late. So, and that's something that I think is interesting to ask. And I asked this, winning the Heisman, does that garner instant success? Is that something that means that you're going to, you win the Heisman, you get picked? Does that mean you're going to have success automatically? And to be honest with you, the answer, in my opinion, is no. I mean, obviously, like I alluded to earlier, there's a lot of factors that play into what happens if you win the Heisman, and if you have to go on, if you're on the right team, if you got a right development with coaches and things like that around you, do you have the pieces around you? Is your head into it? That's another big deal. Like, you can have a lot of these guys that have won the Heisman, and we've heard the stories of the Johnny Manziels and everything. Now, he won the Heisman and came back another year. When you have that Heisman and you have those accolades, does that equate to success? There's a lot that plays into. So I think that's a very big question. And actually, what history shows, if you look at all those players that we said, there's not many of those guys that were truly great. There was guys that were legit. Jim Plunkett won a couple Super Bowls with the Raiders, but he started with the Patriots and actually got to a point where he almost wanted to quit football because things weren't working for him. Testaverde, long tenured career, ended up having success with the Jets. Like I said, taking them to the AFC Championship. But those early years in Tampa were rough. They were rough. Um, Carson, he was able to help him and Ocho Cinco, TJ Houshmandzadeh had those Bengals doing well, but never were able to get over the hump. There's Nick Cam Newton. I mean, we all know NFL MVP at one point. 2015 takes them to the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, loses to the Broncos. But there's still records that Cam Newton holds from his rookie year. I mean, you want to talk about instant success coming from college, winning the Heisman, picked first overall, and then going to the Panthers. He dominated. I mean, he was another one of those otherworldly talents. We've seen recently the Caleb Wilsons. We've seen Trevor Lawrence. We've seen Joe Burrow, Bryce Young. I think the overall factor is you have to be at a situation that is built for you. You look at Caleb, you look at Bryce in their first years, they were not in a situation that was built for them to do well. As things moved, as coaches moved, as certain players came over to their teams, you've seen in their second year, they're starting to thrive. They're starting to do a lot better. Even so as last year, but Panthers and Chicago both make it into the playoffs. So that's something that it's definitely something to look at. And when you got those guys like the Bryce Youngs and the Caleb Williams, those are the ones that let's wait. Let's pump our brakes because a lot of people want to run immediately. Think bust, bust, bust. I've heard that with Trevor Lawrence. Oh, he was a bust. He was X, Y, and Z. And it's like now he wasn't the Heisman Trophy winner, but still, it was one of those situations where really, how many years are we going to give these guys? So that's another question I think we definitely need to ask ourselves. I'll ask that a little bit later. How soon can we start calling people a bust, and what equates to that? So we'll definitely get into that. But going back to this Heisman Trophy winner and getting picked first, I mean, when you really look at it, there's three names, maybe four on that list of Heisman Trophy winners that got picked first that actually have had a semblance of success. And you go with Jim Plunkett, like I said, winning 2 Super Bowls, being MVP of one. You got Joe Burrow on the list. He got to a Super Bowl. Carson Palmer, he hasn't got the Super Bowl, but he was able to bring the Bengals back to some kind of prominence in those early 2000s. And then Cam Newton, who was, like I said, went to Super Bowl NFL MVP, had the Panthers at 15-1, only lose 2 games that year, and the second one was in the Super Bowl. So it's actually more that if you are Heisman and you're first overall, chances are you're not going to have the greatest success. I mean, history has shown us that. We don't know if that means that's the true factor. I mean, things might change. Mendoza might be one of those that kind of changes that. But if you look at some of these other names on this list, like the Spurriers, obviously, like I mentioned, Testaverde, Sam Bradford over here, Jameis. I look, I love Jameis. Jameis Winston is my guy. If you watch him now as he's mic'd up, out, eat a W, out, eat a W, like that. That's my guy, 100%. Unfortunately, most people and Tampa fans, I know y'all how y'all feel. Most people only remember him for his 30 for 30 years, 30 TDs, 30 interceptions. Everybody forgets that he was one of the few quarterbacks to throw for 5,000 yards because all Tampa fans want to tell me is that he did two things at once. He gave both teams an opportunity to win at once. I look, the guy is a gem, okay? He is one of those guys that I wish would have had more success. Unfortunately, that did not come to fruition, but overall, great guy. But Jameis, unfortunately, he's an example of winning the Heisman, getting picked first overall, and even in this situation, he also won the national championship at Florida State, like Mendoza did at Indiana. He had success, but did not have overall great success. So that's something that I think is very interesting. Winning the Heisman, getting picked first overall does not equate to instant success in the league. In fact, if you look at some of the non-quarterbacks, or some of the non-Heisman winning trophy winning quarterbacks that got picked first, a lot of them have had far more success. Peyton Manning, couple Super Bowl victories. John Elway, couple Super Bowl victories. Several Super Bowls, and Aikman, 3 Super Bowl victories. Those guys they were picked first, but they weren't Heisman Trophy winners. So, and again, a lot plays into it. The development of the player, the coaching staff, and what the ownership and management is willing to do to support these guys. But it there's a lot more that plays into it. I don't think there's a real question where you can just say this guy's a Heisman Trophy winner, so that means success. I do think there's something that we do need to actually talk about as we kind of wind down with this show, being that it's the NFL draft, and being that these guys are being picked early on. How much time do we give these quarterbacks? A lot of times, these teams they'll pick quarterbacks much higher than I think they should pick. I remember a couple years back, the Jets selected, what was his name? I just saw him. Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson, they picked him second overall, and then the 49ers picked Trey Lance third overall. In my opinion, I was like, well, why are we picking these guys so early? I understood the Jets, maybe they needed a quarterback. And if I'm not mistaken, the 49ers already had a guy, so they didn't need a quarterback. But you guys are using these top tier picks on these guys, and then they just don't have any success. Now, I was ready to call. I will say this: I was ready to call Zach Wilson a bust, but at the same time, I didn't think Zach Wilson should have got picked as high as he got picked. In my opinion, I mean, I can also say the same thing for Sam Darnold, but Sam Darnold's now a Super Bowl winning coach, our quarterback. But he completely flipped his career around, and again, he's with Seattle. The success he had was also because of the coaching, because of the team, because of everything that was built around him. So look, winning the Heisman doesn't guarantee success. There's more guys that have gotten picked first overall but were not a Heisman that have had elite level success. Those of the 11 quarterbacks that have won the Heisman and been picked first overall, I mean, to be honest with you, Plunkett is the highest accolade you have on here. And that's pretty interesting to see. So as we look, we know there's no guarantees in winning the Heisman and getting picked first and having success in the NFL. And that's why when we have all these conversations about bust, it's what have you done for me lately? Because there's a lot of guys in there that have been projected very high, and all the big names will say, "Oh, this guy's going to be otherworldly talent. This guy's going to be great," but they neglect all of the surrounding situation. So things have to play together. Things have to come together. Unless you have a guy like a Cam Newton or Michael Vick that, by their talent alone, can win 4, 5 to 6 to 7 games a season. Those things play a major role. Those things, and there's a lot of stuff plays into this. So that's why I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, we at the end of the day, we shall most certainly see what happens. Best of luck to Mendoza. Hopefully, he is able to have great success in Las Vegas with the Raiders. Look, I'm thinking Oakland. I'm thinking LA. I'm going all the way back. Hopefully, he is able to have great success. I just don't know. I don't know. I think the kid is a good kid. I think he Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. Obviously, we know the accolades, everything like that. I think he can have success. But is he a guy that's going to change the entire franchise? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. So that remains to be seen. Best of luck to him. But it should be interesting. It should be interesting. One thing I think we can leave here saying is that winning the Heisman and getting picked first does not guarantee instant success. And in fact, winning the Heisman and then transitioning into the league, that doesn't even guarantee instant success. I mean, look, there's a lot of things that play into it. We discussed it here. So tune in and let me know what y'all think, how y'all are feeling. This is just some of my thoughts, me rambling, trying to talk, chit chat it up, see what y'all are doing. Hope y'all have a great Friday. I will talk to y'all on the flip side. You know who it is, your boy Sean Spencer. One after that dynamic duo. And it's Let's Talk Football. Peace, my people. You know what's up. I'm going to send you guys out on somebody that did not win the Heisman Trophy, but he won many Super Bowls. Peace, people.
Oh, man. Oh, wow.